Welcome to this episode of Shabbat with a Schmear. We're here in our virtual Barney Greengrass, together with Shabbat Mom, Meredith Berkman. And we're here to begin the last book of the Torah, the book of Devarim. The Parsha of Devarim is always read on the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av. And it begins with the last speech of Moshe. And Meredith, it's so nice to be able to discuss this book with you and this parsha with you. What do you make of the fact that here we have an entire book that is basically the last 30 days of Moshe's life?
Well, when my kids were younger and I would be creating visual expressions of the parshiot on our table, and I would do them on the terrace and all of these things. For this parsha, I would simply take a close-up. I would take a Moses action figure and he would be the center of my dinner table. And then when I began posting them through Facebook, I would take an extreme close-up of the face of the action figure of Moses. Because as you said, this is essentially a chance for Moses to speak to the people. And as a parent, I think, well, if God forbid, I knew that I only had a certain amount of time, 1 month, to take every single thing that I wanted my kids to remember that I ever said, or in this case, to remember that God said that Moses wanted his people, his children, God's children, his children to remember. That's what I would do, right? And so that's what we see here. It's Moses making sure he doesn't trust the people to remember every single thing that happened before. And so every single thing is repeated because he knows this is his last chance to have an impact, to make sure that for future generations, they will follow the words of God that God gave to him to give to the people. So it's very, very powerful. I also think Moses talks a lot, but I guess if you're Moses, it's okay.
So that's a good question. You figure, this is Moses' last speech, the leader. He doesn't trust the people. What's the bucket list? What does he want to check off? So he begins by telling some stories. And he tells the story of the spies. And in a very odd kind of verse, Moses blames the people. He says, you know what? God punished me because of you. And what do you make of that? I mean, is that kind of small on Moses's part?
Well, there are two ways to look at it. One is that Moses is right. You people fetched, you pushed me over the edge. I hit the rock. I hit the rock twice, and it's your fault. I could totally relate to that. On the other hand, and so you think, oh, wouldn't we want more from our leader, much less Moshe Rabbeinu, that he shouldn't try to make them feel bad? So a couple of things. One is, and we've talked about this before, that is really the power and the beauty of Moses being punished and not being allowed to go into the land is no one is perfect. Only God is perfect. So we could look at it and say, boy, he's fetching that they fetched and it's their fault. So he's human. He's furious. If you people hadn't pushed me, I wouldn't have done it. It's your fault. He's human. Or he wants them to understand just how profoundly important and fundamental it is to their future to always heed the word of God. Because if you don't, look what happened to him.
So that's an interesting twist on it. That Moses is not angry at the people because he's small, but Moses is angry at the people because this is just one more example where Moses is being a leader. And that's something interesting about leadership. Real leaders are leaders until the end. And Moses is a leader until the end. It's almost like you think about lame duck presidents. What do they do when they're lame ducks, when they know they're not going to be reelected? And the answer is Moses is a lame duck leader. but Moses teaches them to the very, very end. And I think that's really a nice way to conclude the first parsha, the Parsha of Devarim. There are many examples of this as we go through the book of Devarim, and I think that's something to keep in mind. Is Moses kind of losing patience with the people at the end, or is Moses rising above it and remaining a leader to the very, very end?
Good for thought. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.